Because
Yeah.
every time I'm like, oh yeah, how do I
All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us. I know that this is probably a little bit strange. I know your kids have been doing online school or hybrid school for a lot of the year, and here you are now having to hop in and do something similar. But I do want to start just by saying thank you. This is the first year outside of tryouts that we've had specific parent sessions. You know, we've had you guys look through and talk through some of the basics of our expectations, and there's a parent contract, but we want to take that a step further this year and really talk through like managing relationships through travel sports, as well as over the next two presentations for the parents, going through the college recruiting side. Like, what's that look like from a financial standpoint? What's that look like from a scholarship standpoint? What should you be doing now? Your kids will also, in their next session, be getting what they should be doing now based on age group. And granted, if you're an 8U parent, you're probably not worried about if your kid's getting a college scholarship, and that's okay. Okay, so we totally trust your autonomy and your decision making in regards to what sessions you should be in and not be in. That's not going to be tracked on the parent side. This is to benefit you. Okay, so as we get into parent relationships here, we just want to really focus on recognizing the who instead of just the how. Okay, and what I mean by that is, you know, there's a lot of pressure that athletes put on themselves and coaches put on them and parents put on them. And we want to get to the point that your athlete fully understands and recognizes that you're going to be proud of who they are as a person and how they go about their business, not just proud of how they play or upset based on if they play poorly. Okay. So some of these things that are in here are very general. Some of them could seem negative. That is not for everybody because some of you guys are doing an incredible job. In fact, I just told Kathy, I believe most of our parents are doing an incredible job. We are not here to tell you how to parent. I'm not here to tell you how to raise your kids or do anything like that. I know that my journey in baseball that led me to this point of coaching had a lot to do with my relationships with adults or how my travel ball time was affected or adjusted with my relationships with my parents. So I think that this is just near and dear to me because I know that looking back, travel sports and the memories that you make with your kids have the opportunity to be some of the best times and the greatest memories. And they also have the ability to be the biggest wrench in a relationship that you have with your kids as they get older. So our purpose here is not intending to change the relationships that you have or how you parent. Our purpose is to give you the information of some of the things that go well or go poorly for a lot of families and allow you to discern kind of what your best option is of how to move forward, how you want to manage that for your family. So, just to go over the basic recap of expectations, and you guys have all at some point heard this from us, but parent coach relationship to start. Okay. Playing time, batting order, defensive positioning, pitching, all of those are coaching decisions. Okay. These should only be discussed with coaches if there is a player treatment concern, meaning if you're worried about how much your son or daughter is being put on the mound, if your son or daughter is being treated poorly as a person, not just a player, but as a person in regards to how the coach is talking to them or treating them, any of that, we fully expect a parent call and we need that to be addressed right away. Because as we've made very clear, that does not fall into the standards and expectations of what we expect or require from our coaches. Okay, so anything that happens there, please let us know. But if it is just a issue of where they're hitting in the batting order or if they're playing enough, okay, that's something that the player should be present for in that conversation. Okay, so big thing, and this is always hard to say to parents and hard to hear as parents, but the reality is if you as a parent are unhappy with playing time or other factors about your son or daughter in their season, we are not concerned about that. Okay, our concern is not your happiness, it's your player's happiness. Okay, and your player's development and providing you everything that we said that we would provide. Okay, so if your player is unhappy, or they have an issue that they want to address in regards to playing time or any other factor, we are absolutely willing to discuss that. Okay. When that meeting happens, some of it's different by age group. We have no expectation that an 8U player can have a conversation with their coach and do it in a professional manner. They're 8, right? But we want to prepare our players that when they reach the high school level, they have had experience in talking to their coaches and experience in actually taking ownership of their career and experience in figuring out what it looks like for them to really vouch for themselves and advocate for themselves with a coach. Okay, so parents can and are encouraged to always be present for a player and coach conversation like this, but we want it to be player led. Okay, so really anybody above the age of 12, we want the players to lead that conversation. Parents, we ask that you help your player lead that conversation. If your kid's 12, they're not going to be perfect at this or have good experience with it, but with your help in that setting, we can all work together to teach your players what it looks like to have a tough conversation in a respectful way to reach an intended outcome. Okay, that's where we want to get. Ultimately, the same thing we tell our players is this: any conflict that we have, we want to go into that conflict or that discussion with the intent of resolution. Okay, just like we want to coach your players out of love with an intent of improvement and development, we want these conversations to be out of love with intent of an outcome that we can all move forward. Okay, so if that conversation from you as a parent is just because you're angry, we're not going to reach a result that we want. If it's out of love and intent for reconciliation, then we have a great opportunity to move forward. And as adults, to show our kids how adults can like disagree and still interact in a positive way, which seems to be something that is not happening very much around us right now. So I think together we can make something really, really cool happen in that setting for our players. Okay. And then the last one, 24-hour rule. Man, this helps everybody from saying something that they're going to regret. Okay. After a game ends, you're upset, your player's upset, coach is upset, something didn't go well. That is not the time nor place to have a yelling match in the parking lot with a player and coach about how the game went. Okay, let's let emotions settle down. Let's give it 24 hours, and then let's have a conversation with that coach. Okay, so 24-hour policy, if you call us and say, I tried to talk to the coach after the game, and coach wouldn't talk to me, we will absolutely 100% have our coaches back in that setting, in the fact that we've asked both coaches and parents to wait 24 hours before a hard conversation or communication comes through. All right. Also, if you have questions, there's a million things going on the screen right now, but if you have questions, the chat is open and you can absolutely throw something in the chat if you need something there. Okay. All right. Oh, I skipped one. There we go. Parent and umpire relationship. This is always fun. Okay. And we all have the fun and funny stories of parents doing something and getting thrown out or anything like that. And sometimes the players remember them and it's like some of their best memories. But here's our expectations from a business side and really just an overall treatment of individual side. You shouldn't have a relationship with an umpire. That should be completely non-existent in the sense that we have trained our coaches on how to deal with umpires. We have their back in their dealings with umpires as long as they're respectful. We expect that they argue and they have some concerns and they vouch for their team in a respectful way. It should never get personal with an umpire from a coach or a parent. We will have an issue if you as a parent are yelling things to or about the umpire that don't have to do with their umpiring ability, that have to do with who they are as a person or what they look like. Like none of that is acceptable ever. And I think the easiest way to put it is to just really consider the example that sets for your kids of how they should treat people, right? That's our biggest issue with it. Okay. Our second biggest issue with it is I know personally, there are times that we have conversations with an umpire to set up future conversations in the game to get calls that we need to get or buy a couple inches on the plate that we need to buy. And the moment that our parents start yelling at the umpire, you could have just ruined 3 innings of work and conversations that we've put in as a coach to put our team in a better position. Okay. You don't have the luxury of seeing or hearing those being on the sidelines, but they are happening. And your ability, when you insert yourself into the game like that, it absolutely affects the way that we can coach and the way that we can handle those players. All right. So understand that yelling from the sidelines, a preferred cheer format. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I will elaborate. Hold on. Okay. Um, when you're yelling from the stands in BAMFAM gear, you are not only, like we tell our players, representing yourself and your kid and your team, you're representing the full program. And oftentimes, people are very, very quick to make assumptions about what a program is or what a group of people is based on the actions of one or two. And we just want to make sure that we don't fall into that category, right? That based on your actions, that does not become a stigma of a program. Okay, we don't expect people to be perfect. We know baseball and softball are emotional games. We know you want the best for your kid and you want the team to win and you want all of those things. So we get the emotion behind it, but we need to do a very good job as adults of managing our actions. Okay. So never, no excuse for getting into it with fans from an opposing team. Okay. No matter what they say. Okay. We can't handle them. We don't control what they say. Don't worry about it. All right. We'll deal with it on the field. Okay. We never want to directly single out a specific player on the opposing team. Now, if you know the player and you're like telling them good job, of course that's fine. All right. But never call a player by name, by number, and put down a kid, right? We are adults. They are children. We don't want to yell at a child. Okay. So let's just get to a point that we're not yelling at children and we know exactly how we need to treat people. Okay. Never curse at the umpire or make any personal remarks about the umpire. And as much as we want you to cheer for your player, like your own individual kid, which is awesome, I think I speak for a lot of our fans and probably most of you in this as parents, when if we go a full season and Jimmy's mom is only yelling for Jimmy all season, that gets frustrating for other parents, right? We want to cheer for the team. So great to cheer for your own individual player, but let's celebrate the success of all of the players. Just like we ask our players to be united and a team, we want our fans to be the same way. Okay, at the end of the day, what the players don't realize is you as parents have to spend a lot of time in the summer with the other parents on the team. And we want that environment to be a really good and cool environment for you guys to actually like be able to relax and have some fun in that. Okay, so we are fine, like I said, with you cheering for your own individual kid. Call them by name, do that. We just ask that you try to cheer for the whole team in that process. Okay, please note that coaches do have a self-reporting policy for ejections from games. If they get themselves into trouble, they have a specific amount of time before they have to let us know. That is a conversation that we always have with them about what happened to get the full situation. That does not mean your coach will be in trouble organizationally if they get thrown out of a game. It does mean that there's a possibility of that, but it really depends on the situation. Okay, we've seen coaches get thrown out for pretty much not doing anything, just little remarks throughout the game that were acceptable and supporting their team. And then we've seen coaches getting thrown out for absolutely reasons that they should get thrown out. Okay. We want to make sure that we handle ourselves in the right way. Sometimes a coach has to do that to get their team in the game. I've gotten thrown out by asking an umpire to throw me out. Sometimes if you're trying to get your team hyped up and ready to go, that might be your last ditch effort in a championship game to get them excited to finish. Okay. So we will deal with that internally. That is not something that we ever put out a public report or feel the need to tell parents or players what's going on unless it is extremely serious. But that's something that is always dealt with internally and will continue to be dealt with and communicated. Okay, so please just know that that's something that is communicated within the program. Moving into the behaviors and really the big thing that we want to talk through in this first session of just behaviors of sports parents that we want to avoid and that we want to actually represent. Okay, so when we look at these 7, I know that it's different because some of you have coached your own kids, some of you are coaches, and even for our coaches of teams that are in here, these are things that we recommend. Number 1, we recommend that you do not coach your kid in the car on the way to the game or from the sidelines. All right, you are their parent. My promise to you is I will never allow a coach to get into your car and be a parent after the game if you never come into our field and try to coach during the game, right? You do your job, we'll do our job. Your kids are going to be very, very understanding, and it's going to set clear boundaries of who's doing what. It's going to allow them to play free, to know that they don't have to please mom and dad or talk to mom and dad during the game, that their coaches are responsible for them. Okay, so there is a difference in talking to your child about the game as you drive to the game versus actually coaching them on the way, right? Don't feed them extra information that's going to confuse them when they get there, but definitely encourage them. Okay. Number 2, unnecessary pressure. If your kid is 8 through 12, they're playing baseball because they love it. 13, playing baseball because they love it. 14 and up, they love it. But now we're talking high school ball, we're talking college ball. So as those years progress, pressure naturally builds on itself. These players feel it. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. Their peers put a lot of pressure on them. We as coaches put a lot of pressure on them. At some point, they need to know that no matter if they're the best player in the world or the worst player in the world, mom and dad love them and have their back no matter how they perform. Okay, so being able to reinforce that versus making them feel like their relationship with you is solely dependent on their performance on the field is absolutely huge in continuing positive relationships with them through travel sports. Okay, number 3, don't yell at the coach or officials during the game. Okay, your coach is trying to coach. He's doing what, or he or she is doing what they believe is the best thing for your team. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it. That doesn't mean they're always right, but they're not trying to do things poorly. Okay. And we believe that the training that they've gone through will mean that they will continuously put the team in the right situation way more often than they do the other. So we have a lot of belief in the coaches. Okay. That's part of the reason that we train them on that. Number 4, try to pay attention while they're playing. And I know sometimes, there's 3 games in a day or 6 in a weekend and you're hanging out with other parents, and there's a ton of value in that. But I would say, especially for our younger age players, the 8 through 12s, those kids get a hit and they look into the stands to see if mom and dad saw, right? Like they take a lot of pride in making you guys smile. And they might not even know it yet or realize it. But if they look over and you're not watching, you're not paying attention, that hurts their feelings a lot of times. And the correlation between that is a lot of times as coaches, we can't get them focused for the next 3 innings because they're upset that mom and dad weren't paying attention. Okay. Once they hit 14U and up, a lot of times they're not looking over. We're reinforcing to them they better not be looking over. So it's a little bit different for the upper age groups, but especially the young ones, make sure that you're getting excited and everything with them. Okay. Number 5, do not have or avoid, negative body language or verbal language before, during, or after the game. Same thing as the last one, right? If you weren't paying attention and they got a hit and they look over, they're going to be upset. If they strike out and they look over and you're chucking your water bottle on the ground because you're mad that they struck out, okay, that does not make them feel very good. And naturally, they specifically will see your reaction and assume that that's how you feel about them, not how you feel about their play. Okay, because a lot of them at the younger ages are not cognitive enough to understand that, like, you're just upset with their play and it doesn't affect your love or anything for them, right? So they feed off of your body language. One of the things that we train the players on is actually understanding body language and communication, all of that. And we'll get to that when we try to adapt these behaviors on the other half of the screen. Okay. Number 6, don't complain to the coach after the game. Okay. Whether your player played all of the innings or none of the innings or hit first or didn't hit or struck out or got thrown, like any of it, 24-hour policy, give it time. We've all, as adults, probably been in a situation where we've said something out of anger or frustration and regretted it later. We want to make sure that we are putting our players in a position to watch us model and represent what it looks like to act in a professional manner, no matter the circumstance or no matter of emotion. Okay, we want to be led by how we feel in our emotion, sure, to some extent, but we can't let that carry over into how we act and how we treat others in the moment. Okay, so 24-hour policy. And then number 7, assessing your child's performance as soon as the game is done. A lot of times they haven't had a chance to really assess it. So the game ends, coach talks to them, coach assesses the game, and then they go and you assess the game. And here's a couple things to think about. Number 1, if you assess the game in a very different way than the coach assessed the game, they don't know who to believe. They're confused. They don't know who's right. They don't know what's real. So it's hard for them to discern the difference between good information and poor information based on who said it. Okay. The second thing is, if they haven't assessed their own performance yet or had a chance to really digest that, and you give them what you think, a lot of times they're going to start to choose to believe solely what you believe. So if you believe that they played very poorly, you don't give them a chance to really think through the process that they went through. And if that was good, they just think that they stink. All right. And then the third piece to that is when they're assessing their performance as soon as the game finishes, or you're looking at that. Okay, we put into the program this year those always grind books for a reason. We want them to start to take ownership of understanding what their goals are, what their process is in reaching that goals, and what it looks like after a game to dissect how you played and how we can adapt and address the issues that we saw in order to improve in the future. So as they get older, it becomes more and more important that they're doing that on their own, because coach won't be around forever. Mom and dad hopefully aren't going to live with them forever. We'd like for them to move out of your house at some point. Okay. So we need to equip them with the tools that they need to actually work through some of this stuff on their own. I think it's great for you to assess that performance with them at some point after, but the time has to be given for them to work through it on their own first. Okay. So on the flip side of this is 7 ways that we can adapt these behaviors in order to make them positive. Okay. So number 1, at the beginning of the season, talk to them. Okay. I don't know, my parents never did, but I don't know if any of you, it's commendable if you have asked your son or daughter, but during our rides to your game, what do you want that to look like? Do you want music on? Do you want your headphones in? Do you want to walk through a visualization together? Do you want to just talk like we're going to a store? Do you want to talk about the game? Okay. That is a huge piece, because if it's addressed beforehand, now you have a plan. Okay. So we want you to ideally have a plan with them of what it looks like pre and post game car routine, of what they want out of you in that. Okay. Number 2, a simple "I love you" goes a long way, or any other phrase that emphasizes the who instead of the what. Okay. Every game that I ever played, and my parents were far from perfect from this side of it, but one thing that I will always remember is before I walked into the dugout, onto the basketball court, anything like that, my dad would always tell me head and heart. Use those 2 things, right? And that was his way of telling me, like, hey, play to the best of your ability. We love you no matter what. And I remember that at 30 years old now, because it was consistent and it was something that I could count on, and it was something that didn't have to do with my actual performance on the court or on the field. Okay, so figure out what that is for you. That could be "I love you." That could be anything that you think gives them that reminder before they leave you and go with the team. Okay. Also, I do see a couple of people that have asked questions in here. I will address these at the end, but I want to get through it first. So I do see them, and I will get to them. All right. Number 3 here, if you can't stay quiet, we got a couple of parents like this on our team, and I love them. But if you can't stay quiet, that just means you have to move farther away when you watch the game. Okay. I'm not telling you can't yell at the umpire. I'm telling you can't yell at the umpire where we can hear you yell at the umpire, or where the umpire can hear it. But if you go sit behind the outfield fence line and you get some other parents to go back there with you, you're probably going to have a hooting time out there, enjoying the game without the fear or the pressure of meeting these expectations or other people being around. Okay. So just understand, we tell the players all the time, know your circumstance, know your audience, know the situation, know your surroundings, right? Understand who's around and what message you're sharing based on what's going on. Okay. So you can just move. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a negative. None of the coaches will look at you differently if you're sitting in the outfield. Okay. Because the reality is, a lot of us as coaches would probably be sitting in the outfield, because that's why we're coaching, because we can't keep our mouths shut either. All right. So we get it. We understand. Okay. Number 4 here, most kids, like we talked about, will seek the approval of their parents. They want to see that you see them and that you are proud of them. And a simple, like, "I'm proud of you" does go a long way. And it goes an even longer way if they go 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts and they have a great attitude all game and they're a great teammate all game and they run back to the dugout after they strike out and they don't hang their head. Those games are the "I'm proud of you" games. Those are the games that you look at your kid when they get home and they're down because of how they played, and you say, "Look, yeah, it was a rough game, but think about what you did. Like, I am so proud of the way that you acted and who you are as a person." Okay. Because that's what we want. If one of you in here right now has a kid that goes pro, that's awesome. Okay. We would love that. If all of you have a kid that goes pro, like, that's incredible. But we also are not naive to the fact that the percentages are low And most of these people will be a professional at something else. And our job is to develop them as young people and young athletes so that they can be prepared for that. Okay. So telling them that and reinforcing the who over the how they play is so pivotal and important for them to continuously want you at games, to continuously ask mom and dad to come and throw with them or throw BP or anything like that. All right. Number 5, body language. Okay. Body language makes up 57% of our communication system. All right. Tone of voice is in the 30s, and the actual words that we say only make up 7%. And they've been trained on this too. But that means that when they look over to you from the field, they can see over 50% of what you're saying just by looking at you, just by seeing how you're sitting or standing, what your body language is in your face, that expression, if you're rolling your eyes, if you're shaking your head at them, if your head is in your hands because they can't hit a ball. Like, I get it, but they're going to feed off of that energy. Okay. So we have to be really, really good at owning our body language, at being whatever we want them to be on the field. We need to represent that in our body language off the field, coaches included. Okay. So tight game, tight situation. We know they're getting nervous. We need to all be confident. Okay. We need to all show the body language of what it looks like to be confident in the face of adversity. So that way they can learn how to do that too. All right. So even though you're just a parent going to watch a game, there's actually some things that you can do to help both the team and your son or daughter in their development just by the way that you are at the games. Okay. And then the last one here, last 2, 24-hour policy, put that in a few times. And then the last one, assess their attitude and process. Okay. If you want to assess something quickly after the game, assess that. What was your attitude during the game? How was your pregame? What was your process on the drive there? Because if all of those things are good and they just didn't have a good game, life happens. Baseball and softball are hard. They're games of failure. Okay. So we want to assess that. We want to reinforce and really commend them for the process. And we all need to trust that the process over time will create the result that we want, right? Incremental growth over the course of time will give you the exponential growth, but we can't expect them to show up after one hitting lesson and suddenly hit 4 bombs in one game. It's not going to happen. Okay. So reinforce the process. The only way for a player to play in college is to fall in love with the process. Otherwise they're going to quit before then. Okay. And they fall in love with the process by people discussing with them that the process is what's important over the result. All right. So any help you can be on that front is super vital and important to us. So expectation recap, the basics, okay, of parent and player. It's your son or daughter. We want that relationship to thrive through travel sports. Okay. It makes me so happy when I come to extra innings and I walk in and I see a mom behind an L screen throwing BP to her son or daughter. To see a dad coming in, like working fielding mechanics with his son or daughter. Okay. Those are memories that these kids will remember forever. And it's great one-on-one time for you as parents with them. And it reminds me of that old country song. She thinks we're just fishing, right? Like, you're not just playing catch. You're not just working on baseball or softball. Like, you are having quality time with your son or daughter that they will never forget, right? So we want to use that, and we want to make sure that we're thriving in that relationship because of travel sports, not that this puts a wrench in that relationship. Okay, number 2, when they're on the field, you're a fan, they're a player, they have a coach, everybody do your job, we'll be fine. All right, just make sure there's a clear separation. The one exception there is injuries. If your kid gets hurt and you're the mom that wants to run out on the field to make sure they're okay, by all means, you can run as fast as you want. Okay, we get it. So you will never have to stay on a sideline and not get on the field. If your kid is hurt, injured, you're worried about them, anything like that, please, please, please be a parent. Come out on the field. Do what you think is best for your son or daughter. All right. Let's see. Recruiting videos or highlights, more for your upper age groups. These are something that parents, you guys can help a lot with taking. You can take them from behind the batter. You can take them from the side of the dugout. In most cases, there's no need for you to come into the dugout or step foot on the field or inside the field of play to do that. Okay. There might be an exception, a time or two. Most of the time the coach will ask you or tell you if there is an exception to that. There might be a field that you go to that the angles aren't right and you need good video for a specific school. We will always work with you on that, but we don't want you just taking your own liberty of opening the gates to come into the field to get video in the middle of a game without approving that with your coach previously. Okay, so just talk through that piece. If that's something you want to do and you want to get video for multiple players, most coaches would be receptive to that as long as you're not verbally speaking with and interacting with the players in that process. But that should be something that's worked out ahead of time. All right. And then the last one on here, nutrition matters. Okay. We know it's not easy when you're on the road, when we have 6 games in a weekend, and a lot of the times the only food that you can get is fast food between games at that point. Okay. That's not easy for you to do to balance that. Okay. We want them to make memories and be kids. Sometimes that means that they're going to eat pizza with their friends. We get it. Okay. But we also want to look at the idea that nutrition absolutely plays a role in energy level and overall development and our ability to maintain performance over the course of a summer. Okay. Overall output comes by quality nutrition as well. Okay. So making sure they show up with water, that they have more water than they do Gatorade, right? Like the electrolytes are great, but we want primarily water, that they're not showing up to a 6 o'clock at night game, having not eaten all day as they prepare for that. Okay. Just making sure that you can do whatever makes sense for you and your family as far as diet and nutrition, that you can provide that for them. All right. With that, as they hit the high school age group, we've worked with some of our players on macronutrients, on setting actually caloric goals with protein, carb, and fat goals. In our 3rd mental training session, we will have a personal trainer in here that we'll talk through nutrition and some of those things more in depth to help you guys out. We have no problem giving recommendations to players to help. That said, we are not nutritionalists. We're not telling you specifically what to eat or how to diet. We would give general recommendations based on if you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, or maintain weight, of what in general you should be taking in or putting into your body on a daily basis to help you reach that spot. Okay, so if that's something you're interested in, let us know. But like I said, we will talk through that in more detail at our final mental training session at the beginning of March. Player expectations, parent and player essentials. Okay, the who means more than the how. Do your best to take pride in the process. Okay, 0-3 or 3 for 3. Eliminate the fear in their mind going in that they're going to be treated different based on performance, right? They should know that at the end of the game, whether they strike out with the bases loaded with a chance to win or hit a walk-off home run, you're still mom and dad. They're still your son or daughter. They're getting in the same car, going to the same house, having the same meal, and sleeping in the same bed. And who they are does not have to change based on what they did in one single baseball or softball game. Okay, there's a lot of clarity in their minds that comes from knowing that going into games, because a lot of pressure is eliminated from their plate. All right. And then be open to discussions without having to have the answers. Okay. They might ask questions about how they should play or what their swing looks like. And sometimes as they get older, like, we just don't know. And it's okay to tell them that. It's okay to answer their questions with questions. Okay. So we want you to ask questions like, how are you breathing between pitches, right? They're talking about how, like, they can't focus on their approach. Okay. Well, what's your breathing look like between pitches? What are you thinking about? Is your mind clear? Okay. So it's not. How do you think you can improve that? Who should you talk to get to that point? Right? Because sometimes it's a coach. Sometimes it's a different coach in the program that we can direct you to. Okay. Sometimes it's somebody outside of the program in a different area that might be able to help. But if you're not asking those questions, a lot of times we're not getting to the source of the problem. So there's no way to develop a solution. Okay. But those questions are so much better than questions like, why did you strike out? Why did I buy that glove if you're just going to make errors with it? How many batters do you plan on pegging today? Do you want me to pack your bat because last game you didn't swing it at all? Maybe I should leave it at home, right? Like, those things, I mean, granted, sometimes they're kind of funny when you, like, look at them. I get it. But at the same time, we never fully understand the detriment that it does to those players until years down the road, when we find out that they still remember that you said that. And that hurts as a parent, because you look back and you're like, why did I care so much that they struck out in a 12U softball game? Why did I care so much that they grounded out or made an error when they were 13 at Indy Sports Park? Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make a difference in their life, right? So we want to understand that it's important, but also understand how important it is compared to who they become. Okay. So there's a balance there for sure. Let's see. All right. Last one, knocking it out here. Okay. Where was it? Oops. Okay. Statement wise, we want to make statements about their play that reinforce the process and who they are. So statements that we recommend, things along the lines of, I noticed that you were the first one on the field between innings. That's awesome. Great job. Okay. We preach pace of play. We preach that it's impossible to have poor body language in a sprint movement, which is why we talk about sprinting onto the field to their positions. Okay. So that's a great thing to reinforce. It has nothing to do with skill. It's something that they can all do. Okay. It seemed like you had fun today and really enjoyed being there, especially for the younger kids, right? It's about falling in love with the game if we want them to progress through the game. So reinforce the fun they're having. It was awesome to see that hit after you worked so hard this week, right? Statements that reinforce who they are, that reinforce being a good teammate, and that reinforce their process are huge. And this last statement's a process one. Awesome to see that hit after you worked so hard this week. Trusting the process through the week, telling them that it's really cool to see the result after what they've worked through. Okay. Instead of, you should be playing over whatever the kid's name is, Thanos. He's lazy and shouldn't be on your team. Parents, if you learn one thing or take one thing from this, this is like the most frustrating thing as a coach ever. We do I think, a very, very good job and place a heavy emphasis on developing a culture within our teams and programs. Okay. Culture is important to us. Them loving where they play is important to us. Them loving their teammates is important to us. So when they get in the car after a meeting with their team where coach says, we over me, okay, team first, it's nobody's individual fault. We're all in this together. We have to figure out our roles. We have to find a way to do this to win games. And then they get in the car and you say, there's no reason you sat. Timmy stinks and should be on the bench and you're way better than him and your coach doesn't know what he's doing. What you don't understand is the next time that player shows up, your thoughts, because your mom and dad, become what they also believe. So now we have a bad egg on the team because that player is reinforcing the things that you told them. They're now practicing thinking, Timmy stinks, why is he playing? They're now not listening to coach because you said coach doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. I'm not telling you that you have to agree with what's going on the field. You are absolutely entitled to your own opinions, but share those with your kid after the season, because you sharing the negatives about his or her teammates or coaches during the season will not help anybody at all. Okay. Especially when we focus on culture, you can be a huge detriment to the culture that we're trying to build if this is a conversation that's being had multiple times throughout the season. All right. So please separate that in your ability to talk to your players. Okay. Don't say things like you lost, not sure why you were smiling out there. Like the game of baseball and softball is still fun. We want to win. Trust me, I hate losing, but it's still okay to have fun in a game and the process of competing. Okay. We knew the other team was that bad. Or if we knew the other team was that bad, we could have saved some time this week and not gone into hit. Okay. Like the idea of winning graciously, understanding how to compete, not putting others down, like huge life lessons along the way. Okay. So going over, really all of those things, the big thing, the big thing that we wanted to talk through was really just some of the things we've already mentioned, but really this page, right? The behaviors that we want to avoid, the behaviors that we really want to promote, and how to increase those relationships with your players. Okay. So I am like right on time. It's 1:43 here, but let me try to answer these couple of questions that came through that you guys had. Okay. Yeah. As far as like team cheers for you guys, there's nothing specific. You can cheer for everybody. You can cheer for your own kid. That's fine. But yeah, there's nothing that like you have to chant or cheer at games. Like we don't want to do that. Let's see. Yes, we are recording. What we will do after all of the sessions are done today, it's about 6 hours of recording. So it takes a little bit to upload, but by middle of next week, all of these will be uploaded into an unlisted YouTube videos. Okay. They'll be separated by session. Unlisted means that you will not be able to go on YouTube and find them. But if a link is sent to you, you will have it. So coaches will be sent links. Parents, if you specifically want links, we can send you those as well. We would love for you to share those or watch those or send them to people who have not seen them. There is a good chance that we end up posting all of the parent sessions publicly. The player sessions have more information that are specific to our program and what we train that we don't want out publicly. These are more general of the expectations of what we want. So a good chance that we put these out there. But yeah, anything that's being recorded, you will have access to from your coaches. Okay. Let's see. The new notebooks. Good question. So the Always Grind notebooks, some of you have them, some of you do not. Those are separated at extra innings by team already. Some coaches have chosen to wait until week 1 to hand them out just because players were in and out with positionals. Some have handed those out. So when you come for your first team practice, you will get it that day. So if you get here 20 minutes early like you're supposed to, you can grab your notebook then. All right. Are there any other questions before we move on? Awesome. I appreciate you guys listening to that. I know now being a parent myself too, I know that those are not always fun to listen to sometimes. So I appreciate it. Uniforms. Yes. So you'll get an email in the next couple of days here for the online store for uniforms. We're finalizing that now. On the BAM side, I know you guys haven't ordered anything yet. So that's coming up in this next week. It'll be open for about a week as well. So we'll put that on social media as well as an email to all of you guys with exactly what you need to order versus what, if it's still good from last year, you do not need to order. Okay. What do we do with the notebooks? Yeah. So just bring it to the first practice and the coaches will reinforce that. Basically, if you look through it, we got the hybrid notebook. So there's half of it that's for training sessions, half of it that's for games. I know it's the hitting one. So for the hitting hour during team practices, players will write down the drills that coaches are telling them to focus on beforehand, as well as the goals that they have for that session. And then after the fact, they'll go back through and actually reflect on that. So that's something parents can reinforce, but it's really something that players are going to take ownership of. Great question. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute myself for just a minute here and pull up the next PowerPoint and get you guys introduced to Mr. John Baird, who's going to walk you through the next one. And then after this next one, the third parent session is just a Q&A over college recruiting, what you guys can be doing based on age group, all of that. So if you're not a parent of somebody in those age groups yet, that would be the time to pop off there. If you are, then you would want to stay in. This next one would be good for all parents as it discusses both the baseball and softball side of recruiting a little bit, but also goes more in depth into just the financial aid and college planning strategies in general of what it looks like and how to prepare yourself for your kids going to college. Okay. So this one's a little bit more general, but touches on all the aspects that we really want. And we believe that it's great information for you guys to get and something that even if you weren't a parent of an athlete would still be really good. Okay. So I'm going to just mute and get that set up and then we will start that next session. If I can find the mute button.